Welcome to Mystic Realms Recap. Please like, share, and subscribe. Enjoy today's episode.
Class Upgrade. Mystic Sylph Queen, SSS. True Celestial Sylph Empress, EX. As her body was undergoing evolution, Shiro knew that she was still conscious as the system messages filled her vision. With no other choice but to read the upgrades while her body is being changed, she sighed internally. With her soul being fixed and Kuromi being a part of her once more, it was as if they both fused into one. She could remember everything Kuromi went through along with her life experiences, what she wanted to do, and her way of thinking. However, that was more like reading a book. While her overall aura had become peaceful due to Kuromi's experience, her dominant side was still Shiro. If anything, this could be called the real Shiro since it was a combination of Kuromi and Nitri. Race Upgrade, Celestial Fae. Race Passive Skills, Celestial Essence, Dominating Presence, Chosen of Nature. Upgraded Skills, Myriad Transformations Throne World - Celestial Gardens. Ancient Spirit Casting - Celestial Language. Tier 3 Element Magic - Tier 4 Element Magic. Sylph Queen's Domain EX - Celestial Empress Domain EX. Basic Elemental Mastery - Intermediate Elemental Mastery. Title Upgrade. Element Empress EX - Celestial Empress EX. Assignable points gained per level increased to 20,000, not including passive class bonuses per level. Looking at the screen emotionlessly, she glanced over at their descriptions. Celestial Essence. You can extract a portion of your mana into a gem that can refine one's mana purity. The more they take, the more powerful their spells become. Each person is limited to 2 celestial essences, and any more would have no effect. You can do this once per month. Dominating Presence. Those that are equal or lower level to you will feel an overbearing presence that commands their respect when talking to you. This can be stacked together with Killing Intent to further amplify its effects. Cannot be turned off, but rather weakened for convenience. Chosen of Nature. Mana Regeneration. Health regeneration are bolstered whenever you are in an area rich with nature rather than man-made constructs. I guess out of these 3, the first one is the most impressive. There are probably more hidden passives to having the race of Celestial Fae, but for now, I suppose this is all I need to know. She mused to herself before glancing towards her new status board. Name: Shiro. Race: Celestial Fae. Title: Advanced Monster. 312/1000 humans killed. Fratricide. Creator of the Frozen Hell series. Incomplete. Creator of Style Azura's Path. Seeker of Truths. Revolutionary. Celestial Empress EX. Level: 101. Class: True Celestial Sylph Empress EX. Ascendant Snowmancer EX. HP: 21. 875,000/21. 875,000. MP: 59,187. 500/59. 187. 500. STR: 80,000 plus 20,000. VIT: 100,000 plus 25,000. INT: 150,000 - 170,000 plus 40,000 plus 8. 500 plus 170,000. AGI: 90,000 plus 15,000. Dex: 70,000 plus 10,000. Def: 50,000 plus 15,000. Equals title bonus, 50%. Tears of the Sylph Queen plus 5% INT. Armor equals armor passive. Unassigned points, 20,000-0. Attunements: Cosmic Ice, Tier 4. Apocalyptic Lightning, Tier 4. Stygian Steel, Tier 4. Rift Shadow, Tier 4, augmented with Calamity's Will. Void Star, Tier 4. Star, Tier 4. Underworld Fire, Tier 4. Boreal Wind, Tier 4. Tectonic Quake, Tier 4. Oceanic Abyss, Tier 4. Forest, Tier 4. Balance: 5 gold, 292 large silver, 473 silver errands, 5604 bronze errands, $0. Skills: True Celestial Sylph Empress. Elemental Breath, Fey Illusions, Force of Elements. Celestial Raiment EX. Tier 4 Element Magic. Rift Strider EX. Celestial Empress Domain EX. Monster Skill: Rejuvenation EX, Frenzied Incarnation EX, Intermediate Elemental Mastery, Spirit Assistance. Snowmancer, Nanotech Engineering Tier 4, Analysis. Frozen Hell Series. Frozen Slumber, Azure Hell Fire, Borealis Lance, Frozen Chandelier. Ancient Healing Arts. Fire of Life. Path of Ascendance. Phantom Path, Azura Sword Path, Celestial Path, Berserker Path. Sword Skills. Refraction, Sword Domain. Other. Minimap, Inspection, Disguise, Combust, Heavenly Constellation, Aurora, Chimera Arts, Celestial Gardens, Hollow Deceit, Kitoma, Celestial Language, Asteria's Blessing, Wrath of Stars. Ho. So my HP has surpassed 20 million and my MP is now almost at 60 million. Not only that, this upgrade has completely fixed my links as well, so I wonder what's my power now. I could fight against those that are higher level than me, so I should have an even easier time now. She thought to herself before trying to move her body. As you are still undergoing evolution, please do not move for it may affect the process. Seeing the system message pop up to warn her about moving, Shiro felt as though a vein had just burst. So you appear when I'm King moving, but when my sister is being erased you say nothing, huh? She questioned with a glare as the system fell silent once more. TCH, fine, stay silent you piece of sh*t. Shiro clicked her tongue before meditating in silence. ####. Have you found out what that pillar of light is? A man asked while glancing towards the peak of Mount Fuji. Unfortunately, our researchers have not been able to decode the runes. They have only been doing this for 2 days, so I'd say we'll get some decent results in a week's time. A week's time? Tell them to hurry. What if the runes suddenly disappear, huh? This is an unprecedented situation where researching the runes and finding out exactly what is happening is top priority. If they're lacking in manpower, just tell them to spit it out, and we'll give them more reinforcement. The man frowned. I understand, but it's not a matter of manpower, but rather the fact that we can't even approach the runes to take a closer look, so we can only observe from afar. Unless we take a closer look, we can't analyze the situation clearly. Hearing the reply, the man frowned before he was suddenly overcome with a heavy pressure that caused him to almost fall out of his chair. Quickly looking towards the source of this pressure, he realized that it was being emanated by the pillar of light. Quickly get everyone. The pillar is dispersing, he commanded before dashing out of his room. Meanwhile, everyone started to gather near the base of Mount Fuji as the pillars slowly crumbled to pieces of light. I'm finally out. A feminine voice echoed. Emin? Well, this is certainly interesting. Seems like my presence has garnered quite a crowd. As the light died down, they finally saw the source of the voice. Floating in the air, they could see a hooded figure dressed in all black with white hair escaping out of the hood. Unfortunately, they could not see the facial details, but they knew that the person was a woman. Who are you? Someone called out as Shiro only titled her head before smiling from under her hood. Let's just say, I'm a completer of the celestial trials. There was a small accident of sorts, which is why I'm forced to talk to you like this. She replied with humor in her voice. In that case, then can you enlighten us about what rank you completed? No normal rank can force this kind of phenomenon. You must have completed Celestial Immortal rank, right? One of the researchers questioned with excitement. You want to know the rank I've completed? Sorry, but I'm not obliged to tell you. Anyways, surrounding Allah. No, it would be Empress now, wouldn't it? Shiro said as she paused for a moment. Surrounding an Empress like this is quite rude, isn't it? Why don't you go on about your day, and you can just think of it as seeing a meteor shower in the night sky or something. She chuckled before attempting to leave. However, before she even moved a finger, 10 figures floated up into the sky. I'm sorry to bother you, miss, but this is a serious problem. With your completion of the quest, the trials seem to be closed for good. No one can access the celestial trials anymore in this location, and those that are halfway done were forced out due to you. I'm sure it's not too much to ask for you to give us a few answers now, would it? A man asked with a slight bow. I'm not obliged to tell you anything I don't want. Unless you are determined to fight me for the answer? I won't say that I'm invincible, but you're going to have to do better if you want to pressure me. Shiro grinned as she snapped her finger. Asterisk, boom. Before anyone could even react, tens upon hundreds of Tier 4 magic circles exploded out in the area around them as the ambient mana went berserk. Shocked at the casting capabilities of this woman, they quickly backed down. We don't mean to pressure you. We were only curious. However, if you are displeased, we will not bother you anymore. The man quickly apologized as sweat rolled down his face. See? Much better. I swear, you people always need a bit of force to actually back down. If I was in a bad mood, I would have killed you. However, Big Sis Kuromi didn't exactly like me killing too often, so I think I'll cut it down a little unless they're truly a danger. Shiro thought to herself with a soft smile before dismissing all of the magic circles. Flicking her wrist, a rift opened up under her as she disappeared from her spot. Traveling through the rift, Shiro glanced towards her mana realm and saw that both Nimue and Izul were looking around in surprise. What are you looking at? It almost looks like you've seen a ghost. Shiro called out with a chuckle. Shiro, what happened? All of your links are healed. The mana realm is flooding with mana. Nimue asked with shock all over her face. Amen. It was one of my rewards for completing the quest. Shiro replied while jumping out of the rift. Activating her disguise, she made herself seem like an average city girl before renting a room so that she could rest in. Closing her eyes, she sent herself into the mana realm. Right then, this should be easier for you to ask questions, right? Shiro smiled before gesturing for Atesh to come to her side. Picking Atesh up, she smiled and pinched his cheeks, causing him to furrow his brows before burrowing his head into her shoulder, which caused her to laugh. So what happened in there? For some reason, we were cut off from you, and before we knew it, everything here changed. Your energy is slightly different, and we've even received an upgrade of our own. Izul asked while floating over to her side. Well, I completed the quest like I said. Surprisingly, I was able to meet Big Sis Kuromi, who unfortunately was not able to come out with me. I'm sure she would have enjoyed playing with you, Addie. Shiro said while patting Atesh's head. Wait, isn't Kuromi? Yeah, she's the previous owner of this body. Let's just say we're two halves of the same coin. The same soul connected from different times. Shiro smiled. I see. Nimue nodded. Anyways, I want to try something first, Shiro said while walking over to the ice island. Since Atesh was a fire spirit, being near the ice island made him a little uncomfortable as Shiro created a blanket of fire for him, which made him cuddle into her embrace some more. How cute, Shiro chuckled before focusing on the main task at hand. Previously, she had recycled a skill, or rather, talent called Trickster that allowed her to act in the manner of anyone without flaws. If she was to combine this with a golem of sorts, she could bring Kuromi back. However, before she could even start on her project, a part of her told her that this was not the same. Even if she succeeds, this golem would not have Kuromi's soul. It's a fake that would only do what she told it to do. Kuromi was gone. She was a part of her now since they're the same person. They weren't meant to be apart to begin with. Asterisk sigh. Sighing softly, she dropped her hand and shook her head. Never mind. Let's see. What shall I do now then? I still need to give mana to the lotus that refuses to bloom, then I also need to use the soul sword upgrade and the soulbound armor upgrade, Shiro said before looking back at the two spirits that resided in her mana realm. Do you want to come out into the real world? I'll be taking Addie around, so it might be a good chance for you two to come out too, Shiro asked. Looking at each other, both Nimue and Izul nodded their heads. Sure, but do we want to put some disguises on? Nimue asked. You know what, sure. I'll change my disguise a little so I look like I'm Addie's mother. Shiro grinned. Focusing back to the real world, she waved her hand as fire, water, and leaves swirled around in her palms. Pushing them out, they slowly formed the figures of Atesh, Nimue, and Izul. Right then, first things first, I need to meet up with everyone else. I suppose telling both Keiko and Kiyomi that I've got my memories back should give them a pleasant surprise. Shiro muttered with a smile. Ara? Pulling out her phone, she sent a simple message to the two of them. Shiro, I've got my memories back now. Immediately upon sending them this message, she was bombarded by quite a few replies. Kiyomi, really? You got your memories back, big sis? Keiko, holy sh**t. Spending some time to prove this to the two of them, she scheduled a meeting back in Varisha once she met up with the rest of the party. Right then, last time I told Lyrica and the others who haven't classed up to meet Sylvia, Chunyu and Madison once they've classed up in order to level up. I wasn't exactly in the trial for a long time, so they should still be doing the tasks. Sending a message to Lyrica, she asked them about where they were right now. Lyrica, oh, we're in a city called Epona. We've managed to class up, so we're just leveling up right now. Shinyu, Sylvie, and Maddie have already reached level 115 while me, Ian, and Aram are level 105. Lysandra has just leveled up to 101, so I'm guessing that you've managed to complete your trial. Shiro, yes, I did. I hope that her evolution didn't cause too much of a problem now, did it? Lyrica, well, if being pestered by the church every day is a big problem, then I suppose I can only say yes. Shiro, wait, what? Lyrica, you see, in her moment of classing up, everyone in the city of Epona saw a golden halo surround her from the sky. Not only that, all of the holy items and religious priests reacted to her presence in a way that had them kneel down and bow to her in worship. By the time they realized what had happened, they called her the true angel, messenger of God. Shiro, okay, I'm heading over to Epona right now. Messaging Kiyomi and Keiko about the change of plans, she had the two of them make their way towards Epona instead. Are you okay? Nimue asked as she could see annoyance in Shiro's expression. Let's just say my daughter's caught the attention of the church due to her class and race. With her identity as an angel being uncovered, the church is pestering her all day long. Shiro replied as she quickly searched up the city of Epona and saw a video of Lysandra's class up. No wonder the church is pestering her. Shiro thought to herself, since she could see the holy light being radiated from Lysandra. Even though she wasn't there, she could practically feel the presence of a higher being just by looking at the video. Clicking her tongue, she brought up the map and looked at where the city of Epona was. Right now, we're in Mount Fuji. To get to Epona, we'll need to leave Japan and go further north, past the Elven country. If they continued north, they'd reach the country of Russia, but Epona wasn't that far up. It was in the border country that was wedged just between Japan and Russia. Known as Rilsa, this was a rather small country, but it could hold its own due to its high-level adventurers that use the dungeons there. Most of them are focused on using the dungeons to level up, so they aren't too bothered by anything that's happening in the outside world as long as it doesn't harm them. They welcome foreigners as long as they pass a test of strength to prove that they're powerful enough to stay in the country. There's only one exception to this, and that's the church. Since the adventurers are fighting every day, there are no doubts that some will be close to death. If not for the priests provided by the church, many of them would have died, so they feel indebted to the church. Therefore, they allow them to set up a branch and have new priests come into the city without a test of strength. The city of Epona was not too far from the capital of Rilsa, as it had its own high-level dungeons. If one had to describe it, it was a beginner-friendly place that allowed those that just reached B rank/tier 4 to have a decent time in leveling up. Looking at the map, Shiro guessed that it would take her around 2 days if she was to be riding her motorbike at full speed. However, this was advised against since there are a few dangerous areas blocking the path between Mount Fuji and Epona, namely the Shurhai trenches that had opened up after the world was changed to accommodate the system and dungeons. The Shurhai trenches contained high-leveled Earth-type monsters that could create new ravines with a snap of a finger. The only reason that they haven't destroyed a large portion of land is because they're keeping each other at bay. The moment one of the monsters tries to destroy their home, the others will spring into action, forming this delicate balance within the Shurhai trenches. Thinking about it for a moment, Shiro decided to hire a few adventurers with the teleport shrines to Rilsa in order to make their journey a little easier, making their way up the country so that they could hire some adventurers to take them to Epona. Shiro had rented a flying mount to take them to Tokyo, as she sat on its back with Addie in her laps while she read a book of sorts. In her spare hand, she held the lotus and charged it with her mana. What are you reading? Nimue asked. Emin? Oh, you mean this? Shiro replied while pointing at the book. It's something that Big Sis wrote while she was in the trial. I printed them all out from memory since I didn't take anything out from the trial. While I technically know what's happening, I guess it's still better to just read it on a physical copy. She chuckled before flipping the pages. Is that so? What does it say? Well, it mainly contained ways to use magic, some strategies along with a few notes about her family members. How Kiyomi really enjoyed eating ramen as a child, and would even go as far as to sneak off in the middle of the night so she could eat ramen at late-night ramen stands. Shiro replied while showing Nimue one of the pages. I see. How many notes did she take? Around 40 to 50 notebooks worth. I'll probably read through them all when I have time. Maybe as a hobby. Speaking of hobbies, I had actually picked up juice making inside the quest. If you want, I can make you some fruit juice. Shiro offered with a soft smile. I'm sure. Nimue nodded since she was a little surprised at how Shiro acted now. She seemed calm and understanding. Almost like a caring big sister, but at the same time, she was still cheeky and quite energetic. It was a strange feeling, but not a bad one since it made one want to get closer to her and enjoy her embrace. Even Addie had fallen asleep in Shiro's lap as his head rested against her chest. There were times where he would start to drool as Shiro would only chuckle before wiping it away gently. As they continued their journey, Shiro felt the lotus shimmer for a moment as the petals started to move. Oh, it is finally done, she muttered in surprise. After charging an astounding 100 billion MP into this lotus, it had finally shown some signs of blooming. Feeling a surge in the mana surrounding them, Shiro could see 3 faint lights being produced in the center of the lotus. Purple, red, and green lights swirled within the center of the lotus as Shiro could feel her connection with the respective elements increase. The purple represented the rift, red for fire, and green for nature. Glancing back at Azul, she could see a faint green halo being strengthened around her presence. Not only that, but a faint veil of light seemed to peel away from her. Her green hair was now a fresh turquoise as her body seemed to emanate a gentle scent that calmed down one's mood. Huh? What's happening? Azul asked with confusion in her voice. Seems like you're experiencing an upgrade of sorts. I've managed to fully charge the lotus, and the 3 chosen elements were Rift Shadow, Underworld Fire, and Forest. With you and Addie having a connection to my forest and fire element, it's only natural that you'll receive an upgrade too. Shiro replied with a soft chuckle. Looking down at Addie, she noticed that the upgrade had woken him up as red markings could be seen spreading out on his body. Not only that, but Addie's hair had also grown a little longer. The ends of his hair seemed to defy gravity as they would flicker like a real flame, but in slow motion. Tilting his head in confusion, he looked up at Shiro, who only patted his head. Don't worry, it's nothing bad, she reassured before checking the system to see what had changed. Tri-element Crystal Lotus has been opened. The following elements have been upgraded. Rift Shadow, Tier 4, Dash, Astral Rift, Tier 5. Underworld Fire, Tier 4, Dash, Dark Celestial Fire, Tier 5. Forest, Tier 4, Dash, Nature, Tier 5. Seeing the familiar nature element, Shiro couldn't help but raise her eyebrows in mild surprise since it had directly propelled 3 of her elements to Tier 5. Azul, seems like I now have the nature element. Since you're contracted to me, you should also have some benefits, Shiro said with a smile. I'm not too sure, but it does feel like I now have a connection to both the air around us along with the moisture in the air. Azul frowned while moving her hand. Following the movement of her hand, the wind in the air around them started to shift, surprising Nimue since Azul should not have been able to control those elements. Damn, look at both Addie and Azul getting upgrades. Nimue smiled since this meant that they can both assist Shiro in the future, since she'll be contesting against other queens to keep their race safe. She wasn't too bothered about not getting an upgrade herself since there was only a limited number of things that she could do. If anything, having Addie and Azul get the upgrade is probably the best case scenario in her opinion. Oh Nimue, you should see your expression right now. It reminds me of when I first met Lyrica. She was unassured of herself and always thought that she was weak. Your expression is almost the same. You're probably thinking something along the lines of I can't help much, right? Shiro sighed as she looked at Nimue with a gentle smile. Surprised at how Shiro knew that she was thinking, Nimue didn't know how to react. Well, just know that having you here is more than enough. I don't need any of you to fight since I'll take on that burden myself. If anything, your inputs in regards to how the spirit race should proceed would be greatly appreciated. Shiro chuckled. Damn, the trial has really changed you, huh? Nimue raised her eyebrows. A little. But that's only because I'm a little carefree right now. There's not much to do other than waiting and doing some miscellaneous tasks. Once the fighting starts, you'll probably see me acting more like me, I suppose. Shiro replied. Right. I wasn't exactly complaining about the change, but this is good to know. Nimue smiled. As they continued their journey up the country so that they could hire an adventurer, Shiro decided to keep the soul sword and soulbound armor upgrades for when she meets Helion again. After all, there was a chance that he could improve them some more. Plus, her weapons and armor were doing quite well as they are, so she's not exactly urged to use the upgrades. Upon arriving in the city of Terumi, which was shortly created after the dungeons appeared, Shiro immediately looked around for the teleport shrine and found it without too many problems. Linking herself to the shrine, she then made her way towards the guild with the trio of spirits with her. Uploading a request to take them to a place as close to Epona as possible, they made their way to a restaurant since it was going to take a while for the request to be accepted by a party. While this was all happening, Shiro had no idea that Lucius had finally completed the 2 tasks that Shiro had set out for him. The first was to sort the faction out, as he had finally managed to become the guaranteed next leader of the faction after completing all of the tasks. The second task was for him to solidify his position so that when Shiro and Een visited, they wouldn't be killed on sight. With the 2 completed, he could finally ask Shiro to visit the Shadow Temple without the risk of being attacked. The memories of what had happened last time was still fresh in his mind, as his body would shiver unconsciously in fear at the thought. To be honest, he wanted to avoid her, but the importance of what he had found was too big for him to just ignore. So how was she? I heard that she seemed to be the cause of the trials closing for good. Lucius called out as a woman appeared in his office. Well, from what I could tell, it seems like the girl you told me to keep an eye on has managed to complete one of the higher grades of the trials. The woman replied. If Shiro was in the room, she would have recognized her to be Sherry's, the Sage of Shadows that she had met just before the trial had opened. Is that so? Figures, it's Shiro after all. Lucius muttered before glancing towards Sherry's. Anyways, I heard that her friends are in Epona, so she'll probably be looking for them. I want you to help me deliver a message to her along with being her guide, since I'm a little busy. Since you're requesting something from me, you remember the payment, right? Sherry's chuckled. Of course I haven't forgotten. Everything will be deposited to your account once the task is finished. Lucius nodded. Amen. In that case, then I'm going. Don't miss me too much, okay? Sherry smiled. I won't. Che, fine. Sherry's frown before faded away into nothingness, leaving only Lucius in the room. Wandering around in Terumi, Shiro spent the entire time entertaining Addie and taking him to places he would be interested in. During this period, she had also noticed her level go up a few times, telling her that Lysandra was clearing dungeons with the rest of the party. Of course, to avoid some trouble, Shiro disguised herself and the 3 spirits so that they looked like an inconspicuous family that was having a relaxing day out. Say, should we get Addie some clothes? All he has is what his fire solidifies into, and your disguises. Nimue asked while playing around with Atesh. Perhaps. Let's go find a clothes shop for him then. It would be good if they had monster cloth so it won't break. Shiro nodded her head as she did a quick search for a nearby store that sold what they wanted. Finding 3 stores that fit their requirements, they started to make their way through each of them. The first store had a wide variety, but nothing of great quality, while the second were a bit too flamboyant. As for the third, well, they had a small issue with how the group looked. Since they wanted to be inconspicuous, their disguises made them seem rather common. With the third store being one that served high-level adventurers and rich folks, it was only natural that they didn't think the group could buy any of their outfits. Get out of here. If you're just going to window shop, go somewhere else. You're disturbing the people in the store. Looking at how you are, I doubt you can even afford a pair of pants from here, never mind a full outfit. The receptionist scoffed with disdain. Raising her eyebrow, Shiro could feel her annoyance soar within a single moment. Taking a deep breath, she calmed herself down before looking back at the receptionist. Big Sis Kuromi always told me to try resolving things peacefully, so this should be a good practice. Who knows? Everyone is hunting monsters nowadays. Surely you shouldn't underestimate how much we could have earned despite looking like this. Shiro said with a smile. Hey, you really think you can afford what we have, huh? Do you know that this stuff is made from the finest monster cloth that won't break at all? While it does not protect you from attacks, it guarantees that you still look presentable in a fight. Just imagine the shame of fighting nude because a fire breath destroyed your clothes. Therefore, do you really think that you can afford what we have despite the large demand for this kind of clothing? The receptionist asked sarcastically. Yep, just tell me how much one would cost for Addie. Shiro nodded while gesturing to Atesh. 100 large silv dash. Asterisk bang. Slamming down a bag that was filled with 100 large silver errands, Shiro kept her nonchalant smile as the receptionist widened her eyes before calming herself down. What I mean is 100 large silver errands for a single piece, while it's 300 for a whole set. Keeping a smile on her face, Shiro then took the 100 large silvers back before placing down 3 gold errands. Of course, let me show you the outfits now. The receptionist quickly smiled while sweeping the coins away. Keeping her smile, she brought them to where they sold clothes for children. However, upon arrival, Shiro was quite disappointed by what she saw. While it was technically made from monster cloth, it was quite poor in quality. It had been changed so that the cloth would be stretched over a large surface area, making it feel flimsy. Is this really what's worth 3 gold? Shiro asked with a raised eyebrow. Of course. The receptionist smiled, but she knew that was complete bullshit. At best, the clothes she was showing Shiro were only worth around 10 large silvers, mainly due to the monster cloth. She had increased it by 10 times in order to rip her off, but since she could produce 100 large silvers without a problem, it meant she could produce more, hence why she asked for 3 gold, or rather, 300 large silvers instead. I see. Well, it seems like it's a little expensive for my tastes after all. I'd like to have my 3 gold back, please. Shiro asked as she was a little annoyed by the fact that this *TTY piece of cloth would cost so much. If it was good quality, she wouldn't mind spending a lot for Addie since she could always earn it back whenever she wanted. But even if that's the case, she did not want to use her money on crap products. Oh, I'm sorry, but since you gave us money, it's policy that you either buy something or get a third of your money back. In other words, it is pick an outfit or take back 1 gold. The receptionist smiled. Since they had level 150 guards protecting the store, it wasn't difficult for them to reinforce the rules if needs be. Do remember that we have several level 150 high-quality guards around the place, so don't try to pull anything funny. Why, was that a threat? Shiro asked as her smile faded away. Feeling her aura turning a little hostile, Nimue knew that things might turn ugly since this was the real Shiro. Or rather, as she liked to call it, demon on the battlefield. Not quite a threat, but rather a friendly reminder. Oh, I see. Quite ballsy for a *TTY receptionist, don't you think? Shiro replied as she was clearly annoyed by this person. I see. If that's you, how wanna be then? Guards. The receptionist called out as 5 tier 4 magic circles surrounded Shiro. However, before they could even activate, Shiro snapped her fingers as 5 copies of Ataraxia appeared around her and smashed the magic circles apart. Seriously, after Big Sis became a part of me, I wanted to respect her wishes, but it seems like I'm not suited to be peaceful to begin with. Shiro muttered as she stomped down with her foot. Her hair fluttered from her aura as she flicked her wrist, and 5 guards suddenly appeared before her. Shocked at how they were forcefully teleported next to her, the guards quickly attacked her. Kitoma. Shiro commanded as everything in a 5-meter radius around her froze up for a single second. This was a skill she had developed back in Kyoto, as everything that was frozen in place would also receive a 20% decrease to their defenses, making her counterattack all the more powerful. In a single second, she was able to surround them with a multitude of attacks that would launch at a moment's notice. Amplifying her dominating presence passive along with some killing intent, she waved her hands as swords stabbed deeply into their thighs and pinning them to the ground. Naturally, this included the receptionist since she had tried to scam them. Arg! Crying out in pain, the receptionist had tears in her eyes as she quickly pleaded for mercy. Seeing this, Shiro couldn't help but think back to the moment when the system took Kuromi away from her without sparing her a single thought. Sighing softly, she waved her hand and dispersed the attacks. I don't exactly want Addie to see too much bloodshed, so just give me the money, and I'll be on my way, Shiro said as she glanced at the guards. Checking to see if there were still signs of hostility in their eyes or not, she decided to spare them if they'd given up. But if they were still hostile, then let's just say she's already given them a second chance. Nodding her head frantically, the receptionist quickly ran over the counter and gave Shiro all the money she could find. I don't need that much. Just give me the 3 gold back. Shiro sighed since she wasn't here to rob anyone. Confused as to why she would only want 3 gold back despite what had happened, the receptionist nodded her head and gave her the 3 gold. Leaving the store, Shiro walked along the street with a smile, as if nothing had happened. So why did you spare them? I'm honestly curious since I thought you would have dealt with them quickly and cleanly. I know you said that you don't want Addie to see too much bloodshed, but there are probably a million ways for you to kill them without blood being spilt everywhere. Nimue asked curiously. Obviously that's because Shiro's a good girl. Izul chipped in since she believed that Shiro wasn't cruel since she had saved her from the elven country and had even chosen a peaceful way to do it. Well, let's just say I wanted to respect my big sister's wishes. Shiro smiled before going towards a hotel to rent a room for the night. If no one accepted their request tomorrow, she'd probably go on a road trip with the 3 spirits. Waking up in the morning, Shiro took Addie down to have some breakfast while the other 2 were still sleeping peacefully. Since it was quite rare that they stayed in the physical world, she wanted to let them enjoy their time a bit more, so she wasn't in a rush to wake them up. Addie, which meal do you want? Shiro asked while gesturing to the different options. Waiting for a moment, she saw Addie point his hands towards one of them and ordered 2 portions. Sitting down with Addie, she fed him the meal while glancing at her phone to check some news along with checking to see if anyone had picked up her request. Looking up some information about the front lines, she saw that Keiko had been much more enthusiastic as she was storming through the enemy's higher ranks like nothing. Spending most of her time killing the main figureheads, she was able to help push back the enemy and claim more land for humanity. They tried to interview her, but she only had 1 sentence to say to the reporters. In the time it takes for me to answer your questions, I can be killing 5 to 10 of their leaders. Which one do you want me to do? Keiko asked sarcastically. Since they knew that she had a teleportation skill, they did not question this statement and allowed her to go on about her tasks. Seeing Keiko so enthusiastic about clearing the front lines, Shiro couldn't help but chuckle. Addie, you see this woman here? That's your Auntie Keiko. She's one of the most powerful people in the world, Shiro said while showing Addie a picture of Keiko. Tilting his head for a moment, Addie nodded before reaching out for some food since Shiro had paused. Patting his head, she resumed her actions of feeding him while checking for other information. As she was doing this, both Nimue and Izul soon woke up and joined them downstairs. Getting their own food, they enjoyed a rather peaceful morning. Welp, it doesn't seem like anyone has picked up my request, so we'll be taking a road trip instead, Shiro said as she checked her request one last time. That's quite unfortunate then, isn't it? Without the teleport shrine, it may take us quite a while to reach Epona. Nimue furrowed her brows. Well, I guess I can try to make my way to Epona as fast as I can with my motorbike, but honestly, the speed might be a lit. Wait a minute. You know what? Addie, what do you prefer? Traveling through the air or overland travel? Shiro asked with a smile. Furrowing his brows, Addie only tilted his head in confusion. Well, to put it simply, would you like to fly through the air or speed across the land? Thinking about it for a moment, Addie pointed his finger up towards the ceiling as Shiro understood that he was wanting to travel through the air. Welp, you heard him. Come with me. I got a blueprint I want to make since my links are healed now. Shiro grinned. Canceling the request, she made her way out of the city with the trio of spirits following her. Once she was sure that they were far enough from the city, Shiro set up a camouflaging field so that no one could see what they were doing. Crouching down, she pressed her palms on the ground before closing her eyes. Bringing up the blueprint of a jet in her mind, nanobots surged out from her hands as the vehicle was slowly constructed in front of them. Looking at the jet in shock, Nimue couldn't believe that Shiro had just created a giant plane without any help from an already existing jet, much like what she had done with the motorcycle. Right then, Addie will sit in the front with me while you 2 can sit in the back, Shiro said as she climbed into the jet with Addie in her hands. Right then, this jet is a little different to the jet available in this current era since I can make something much better. I've also made it so that it's a little more comfortable for Addie since he's only a child. Shiro smiled while flicking a few switches. Oh, what did you do? Nimue asked curiously while putting on the seatbelt. Well, it's just so that Addie doesn't need to feel the force from me flying quite fast. You 2, on the other hand, can experience the raw sensation. Shiro grinned as a familiar sadistic light could be seen in her eyes as Nimue felt a bad feeling well up in her heart. Before she could even voice her complaint, She felt a tremendous force hit into her as she was pressed against the chair. Asterisk, boom. Launching into the air, the force from the engine ripped out a giant chunk of the dirt as Shiro quickly flipped her hands and repaired the location using her nature element before she was out of range. Damn it, she didn't change. She's still sadistic. Nimue cried out in her mind as she couldn't move from her chair. Glancing to the side, she noticed that Azul seemed to be much more relaxed when compared to her, almost as if she was just on a relaxing roller coaster ride. Bias. I call bias. Why am I the only one experiencing the full force? She complained as the scenery around them started to blur from the speed of the jet. Addy, who was sitting at the front, felt none of this as he looked down at the world with a glimmer of excitement in his eyes. Seeing his expression, Shiro felt a warm feeling rise up in her heart as she gently patted his head. Of course, to not ruin this sweet moment, Shiro ignored Nimue's suffering in the background. Following a course that she had set up, they started to make their way near the border of Rilsa, since it would be quite back to invade a country with her jet. During this, there were a few medium-leveled monsters that tried to attack them, but the guns installed on the jet easily dealt with them before they could even come close to the jet. Slowing down once they were close, Shiro landed the jet without much difficulty as Nimue immediately jumped off the jet as she laid on the ground while on the verge of passing out. Are you not good with planes? Shiro asked with a grin. OF*CK right off. You know what you did. Nimue retorted as her smile twitched. I have no idea what you're on about. Shiro replied as she acted dumb about the situation at hand. Picking Addy up, she quickly healed up Nimue before disassembling the jet. So then, after we pass the borders, I'll make us a car so that we can get to Epona quickly. Honestly, the quicker we arrive in Epona, the better. Shiro smiled as Nimue paled at the mention of cars. I think I'll stay in your mana realm for the journey. You can call me out when we arrive. Nimue suggested. Oh what? You don't want to stay with Addy and Azul? Shiro smiled as there was a teasing glint in her eyes that brought shivers down Nimue's spine. I'll be fine. I'd rather not throw up in your car. Nimue replied. Can spirits even throw up? Anyways, I'll give you a break now. Don't worry, this time I won't pull anything. Shiro chuckled. Raising her eyebrows in suspicion, Nimue couldn't help but look at Shiro with skepticism. What's with that look? Like I said, don't worry, Shiro smiled. When I don't need to worry about you pranking me out of nowhere is when the sun starts to rise from the west. Nimue retorted. You hurt my feelings. Shiro replied while they made their way to the border. Upon arrival, they weren't too surprised to see that the border was rather empty as there were only a few guards around the place. It didn't matter if they invaded without coming to the border since they would have no entry ID. Of course, they can also do it in the actual city itself, but this way was just more efficient with how they were entering the city. State your business and show us your ID. The guard asked as Shiro nodded. We're here to visit some friends along with clearing some dungeons to increase our levels, Shiro said as she reached into her pocket. Making 4 fake guild IDs with her nanobots, she handed them to the guard. Once they scanned them into the computer, it'd upload a virus of sorts that would verify their identity. MN, you're clear. Do you know the policy of this place? He asked as Shiro nodded. I do, but would my son need to go through this as well? She asked while gesturing to Addy. No need. As long as you and these 2 ladies pass, you'll be free to get your finalized ID to Rilsa. The guard replied. Great. In that case, then I'll go first. Shiro smiled while handing Addy to Nimue. It would be quite awkward to do the test while holding Addy after all. Walking through the doors, Shiro was led down a long flight of stairs and into a fighting hall of sorts. Inside this hall stood a fighting dummy that was made from this black metal that had several tens to hundreds of runes etched onto the surface. Shaped like a rather large humanoid, the fighting dummy wielded a sword that was strapped onto its waist. Mechanized Warrior 22 Malawian Quatches. This is the latest sparring dummy that the Council of Science has produced. After watching the videos of the rogue assassin, they were able to make some breakthroughs with using mana and machine together in one. While this testing dummy has no level, it should be able to match up to someone around level 110. Since you're only level 101, as long as you can scratch this dummy, it'll count as a pass. The guard explained as Shiro flinched a little at the nickname of Rogue Assassin. Asterisk cough. I just have to scratch it. Shiro asked with a slightly forced smile. If he knew that she could kill level 150s in a second, would he still ask her to just scratch it? Yes. What if I accidentally destroy it? Shiro asked again just in case he held her accountable for destruction of property. I highly doubt it, but if you do destroy it, we'll need to file a report saying how it was destroyed and how it can be improved. The guard chuckled since he found her confidence quite amusing. Not many level 101s would say they can destroy a level 110 enemy without some life-saving items. Just so you know, this has to be entirely your own capability. If you use a life-saving item or any item that may suddenly boost your power such as medicine, you will have to retake the test. He reminded. Understood. Shiro smiled. Since that's the case, she might as well give her upgraded elements a try. After receiving them from the Lotus, she didn't get much of an impression from them other than the fact that both Adi and Azul received an upgrade. Which one should I use? Maybe Dark Celestial Fire? She wondered to herself as she also wanted to give her celestial raiment another try since she now had proper control over celestial energy. Ready whenever you are. The guard smiled as he turned on the dummy. Immediately as he turned it on, a blue glow lit up in the runes that surrounded his body. A soft whirring sound could be heard as the dummy sprung to life. Closing one of her eyes, she tried to activate the celestial raiment without the help of the system. Remembering the sensation she had felt back in the trial, she manually linked up her energy channels along with her mana links in order to activate the skill. Asterisk, boom. Stomping down, a pulse of energy exploded from her as iridescent armor started to form around her. Choosing the element of dark celestial fire, the armor was colored black and red with hints of orange. Within this, there seemed to be stars shimmering as her hair also changed color in accordance to her element. Crouching down slightly, she narrowed her eyes at the dummy and decided to control her strength so that it was just 20% of her overall power. After all, she remembered what she did in the Elven capital when she was still injured, and going to 100% would be risky since not even she knew what it looked like. Shocked at the sudden impact of her form, the guard started to wonder if she could actually defeat the dummy like she said. However, while he humored the idea of her defeating the dummy, he still didn't believe she could destroy it. Watching Shiro dash towards the dummy, he kept a casual smile on his face until her fist came into contact with the enemy. In a single moment, the world seemed to lose color as everything was wrapped in a cosmic black that shimmered like the night sky. All the guard could see was himself as his vision seemed to be limited. Even the sounds that he heard were dulled out except for one. A deafening explosion that seemed to ring in his ears even though everything was suppressed. Once he came back to his senses, he was greeted by the sunlight, which was very strange considering that they should be underground right now. Looking up, he finally realized the problem that he was facing. With a single attack, Shiro had created a small ravine that was still smoking from the heat. Not only was the fighting dummy evaporated, but a large chunk of the building was also taken away in that moment. Despite the reinforcement on the base, it seemed like it didn't matter to her attack. F***CK. Shiro said as she had a slightly awkward smile on her face. She did not expect for the dark celestial fire to do this much damage despite being at 20% of her strength. If she had used 100%, then she could say bye-bye to this border. However, at the same time, if a tier 5 attunement mixed with her celestial raiment didn't do this much, she would be slightly disappointed. Turning over to Shiro, the guard had disbelief written all over his face as he struggled to understand how this had happened. Halt, what is your real level? No level 101 can demonstrate this kind of power, he shouted out with hesitation. After all, if he made a wrong move, she could kill him easily. On the other hand, he also needed to follow procedures since having a dangerous figure like this enter the country could put his family at risk. My real level is indeed level 101. I had only just classed up, so I decided to stack every single one of my skills together. I didn't expect to cause that much of a hassle, I'm sorry. Shiro apologized as she quickly lied. Of course, she didn't stack all of her skills together. If she did, she might as well create a giant ravine in the ground like the Shurhai trenches, but name it the Shiro trenches instead. Hearing her explanation, the guard narrowed his eyes as there was some legitimacy to her statement. Everyone would need some time to get used to the power spike they experienced after classing up, so the fact that she would stack all of her skills against a level 110 opponent was understandable. Okay, but I'll need to issue you a level 3 dangerous personal ID, okay? This just means that the guards will keep an eye on you, but not make a move should you be civilized. The guard said as Shiro nodded. This was probably the best case scenario since she wouldn't need to fight her way in. Oh, that is fine. So what about my companions? Since I destroyed the dummy, would they need to take the test as well? Shiro asked as the guard paused for a moment. They can either get a level 3 dangerous person ID like you, or then can be properly tested in the city. However, just to remind you, the guards will keep an eye on them if they have a level 3 dangerous person ID. The guard replied, That's fine with me. I'll ask them just in case. Shiro smiled. As she walked back up the stairs, she was lectured by Nimue first before she could even ask her question. Waving her concerns off with sorry, I underestimated myself. Shiro had their IDs created and entered the country of Rilsa. Meanwhile, the guard was currently filling in the document in regard to the fighting dummy. Result of battle, complete evaporation. No scraps could be found. Cause of defeat, a single attack of the fire attribute. Notes. She claimed that she had underestimated her power and stacked all of her skills together into one attack in order to defeat the mechanized infantry. Video of fight is unrecoverable due to the demolition of a large portion of the base. Name of adventurer that defeated the mechanized infantry, Naomi Vespera. Level of adventurer that defeated the mechanized infantry, 101. Class, Celestial Mage, confirmed. ID assigned, Level 3 dangerous person. ####. Right then, to get to Epona, we'll need to travel northwest from our location. We should be able to get to the city in a few hours if I go by jet or half a day by car. Which one do you prefer? Shiro asked. Neither. Both are horrible in your hands. Nimue replied instantly. Oh, don't be like that. I'll need to drive carefully since there might be forests and trees in the way. Shiro smiled. However, despite seeing her smile, Nimue's heart was not calmed down at all. I'll stay in your mana realm. She insisted. Fine, fine. Shiro shrugged. Little did Nimue know, she made the correct call as Shiro only said she'll drive carefully, but not slowly. Soon, they arrived in the city of Epona. Upon arrival, they were immediately greeted with large walls that stretched across the border of the city. Patrols roamed around the top of the wall as they were not able to see too much since they were on the ground. On the wall itself, Shiro could identify a few runes that seemed to restrict the amount of mana one can use should they try to forcefully break through over the wall. Seems like force is not an option unless you want to make the entire city your enemy. Shiro mused to herself with a smile before walking towards the main gates. Showing them her ID, the guards narrowed their eyes at her before nodding and letting the group through. Immediately feeling a few pairs of eyes on her, Shiro felt a little uncomfortable but knew that they were doing it for security reasons. Of course, if she was to take a bath and she felt a pair of eyes on her, she would no doubt consider the option of poking them in the eyes. While she wasn't exactly old-fashioned, she still wanted her bare body to only be seen by those she trusted deeply or her future partner. Entering the city, she saw the marbled buildings that seemed to glow with holiness that made her feel an urge to vomit since she wasn't the most religious person around. Especially when you consider her previous death to be the result of a future god. The other buildings were rather modern due to their sleek designs and simplicity. Rather than huge flats and skyscrapers she was used to seeing in Japan, Epona was filled with detached houses and a few flats that could be seen here and there. They weren't huge flats either, only small-scaled ones. Shaking her head, Shiro pulled out her phone and messaged the party about her arrival. Waiting a few moments, they scheduled their meeting in one of the better restaurants in the city. After all, that was the only acceptable place that Een would agree to. Hearing about her daughter's shenanigans again, Shiro couldn't help but laugh lightly since she had to admit that she missed the glutton in the time that they were apart. Right then, Addie, we're about to go meet my friends along with your sisters. Shiro smiled as Addie nodded. Deep inside, he was a little curious about his other family members. Following the map, Shiro soon arrived in front of the restaurant called Desires. A rather interesting name considering the fact that Yin's primary desire was to eat the best food every day. Let's see. I don't exactly want the guards to see what I really look like, so I guess a little illusion wouldn't hurt. I'll just look like I've entered the toilet before disappearing, she thought to herself as she flicked her finger. Without anyone noticing, an illusion was cast onto them as they entered the restaurant. Upon entry, they started to make their way to the toilets while their main bodies looked around for Lyrica and the others. Seeing the set of familiar people in the distance, Shiro's eyes warmed up a little as she could not suppress the smile on her face. While it may only be a few days, maybe weeks in the real world, they had actually been apart for a much longer period of time. The same would go for them since they were challenging dungeons every day. As she approached their table, she waved her hand and revealed her true appearance only to the party. Ashiro, you PFFFF, why the hell did you adopt another kid? Madison called out as her attention was immediately grabbed by the adorable youth in Shiro's hands. Kid, Lyrica widened her eyes at Shiro. PFT, what are you thinking? I'm still a virgin. Shiro chuckled as Lyrica instantly blushed and looked away. I don't tea. Actually, never mind, we were wondering about that. So who did you kidnap this time? Madison sighed. Hey, I'm offended. Technically, I've never kidnapped anyone, okay? And is that the first thing you ask me after not seeing me for so long? Shiro asked with a twitch in her smile. Well, without losing your cherry, you're already the mother of 3 and the queen of a race. Aram chuckled as she took a sip of her drink. Quite true. Anyways, girls, this is Adi, or rather, Atesh is his name. He is a fire spirit born from the combination of 2 flames that I had acquired just before entering the trial. In one sense, I am his mother since I gave birth to him in one way or another. Shiro smiled as the group nodded. While they were listening to Shiro explain about Atesh's circumstances, Een crept up beside him as she looked at him with curiosity in her eyes. So are you my little brother? She asked quietly. Tilting his head, Atesh nodded after a short pause. In that case then here, have this. It's my favorite food in this restaurant. Since you're my little brother, Big Sis will make sure you also get the best food, okay? Een smiled as she had never interacted with a baby before. Seeing Atesh, a feeling of wanting to dote on him appeared in her mind, as she was even willing to share her food without getting anything in return. As for Lysandra, she stood by the side and only glanced at Atesh every once in a while. How cute. I wonder how his cheeks feel, she would think to herself. Noticing that Een was having fun with Atesh, Shiro smiled and patted her head before looking over to Sylvia and Chunyu. Seeing that they were in a world of their own, Shiro decided to leave them to their own devices for now and fill them in later. Shaking her head, she glanced at everyone's stats. Lysandra LVL 110 Celestial Seraphim. Een LVL 118 Dark Star Devourer. Lyrica LVL 117 Sword Saint Apprentice. Aram LVL 117 Grand Force Mage. Sylvia LVL 123 Grand Healing Sage. Chunyu LVL 121 Phantom Reaper. Madison LVL 121 Demonic Valkyrie. Asterisk whistle. Damn, seems like you've been quite busy, haven't you? Shiro asked with a smile since 3 of them were actually past level 120 now, and the others weren't too far off. Not only that, but they had also acquired quite a few interesting classes such as the Sword Saint Apprentice. Her guess was that it was the step before Elven Sword Saintess since it had apprentice in the name, but there could be a chance for Lyrica to get a hidden class that could potentially be stronger than the Sword Saintess. Yeah, the requirements were a bit annoying to complete, but with Keiko's help, we were able to do the item gathering part quite easily. Lyrica smiled. I see. I'll have to give her my thanks later then. Also, Aram, what's a Force Mage? I don't think I heard of something like that before. Shiro asked curiously. Well, let's just say I control gravity to some degree. Aram chuckled. Hey, I had always taken you for one that focuses on attack due to your previous class. Shiro raised her eyebrow. I used to be, but control suits me a bit better. You see, having too many attackers is also bad since we don't have anyone to control the battlefield. Sure, we have you, but you can also fit into other roles, so we need a dedicated control mage. Hence why I picked this class, since it allows me to control the battlefield quite nicely. Aram replied with a smile. I see. In that case, then this notebook should be quite useful for you. Shiro nodded before printing out one of Kuromi's research notebooks that contained quite a bit of her understanding around being a control mage. Flipping through the pages, Aram was surprised at how detailed and informative it was and couldn't help but look at Shiro with shock. Where did you even get such a treasure? She asked. That? My big sister gave me it. Shiro replied casually. Wait, what? Hearing that Shiro mentioned her big sister, the entire party paused for a moment as Evanine stopped her doting on Atesh. Emin? Oh right, you girls don't know. You see, I met Kuromi in my trial. In one way or another, she's technically my big sister of sorts. Her family is my family. Shiro explained briefly as there was a longing look in her eyes. Seeing this look, Lyrica couldn't help but feel both sad and jealous. Sad because Shiro seemed hurt, but at the same time jealous because she wished that Shiro would have the same look when thinking of her. Quickly shaking her head, Lyrica felt a little ashamed to be thinking of this when there's clearly something up with Shiro's big sis and decided to listen to the story silently. Explaining the experiences she had within the trial, the group spent the next hour or so catching up on what everyone had been doing. So you and Kuromi merged together in a way? Lyrica asked curiously. Somewhat. I'm still the dominant personality, but think of it as me inheriting her memories. I know everything that she's gone through. Shiro replied with a smile. I see. While they were talking about the merge of Kuromi and Shiro, Aram was rather curious about the exact details, but decided not to voice her questions since that would be a little too insensitive. However, there was something she could do, and that was to look at her true nature. From what she'd heard, it seemed like she had been looking at Kuromi all along, and that was keeping a veil on Shiro's nature. If she looked now, Aram knew that what she saw would be Shiro in her truest form. Activating her skill, she glanced towards Shiro in order to see her true nature. What the? Shocked to the point where she could not even speak in her mind, Aram couldn't believe what she was seeing. A graceful figure floated around Shiro as its body was akin to a faint blue membrane in the shape of a woman. Within this membrane, it seemed to contain a galaxy. There was darkness, but there was also the warm embrace of the sun. Her expression was serene as it would put anyone in a calm mood. The figure seemed to sway gently, and every move would cause the stars to shift. Making eye contact with the figure, Aram noticed a small flicker of sentience that soon faded as the figure continued to watch over Shiro. Could that be Kuromi? Aram wondered to herself before shaking her head. She wasn't too familiar with the workings of true natures, so she couldn't say for sure. But she didn't want to say anything since it would be akin to giving Shiro false hope should it not be what they thought it was. Now then, on to the more important topic. What's this about you getting into trouble with the church? Shiro asked as she glanced towards Lysandra. URG, don't remind me. Lysandra sighed since she wasn't exactly happy about the situation. Basically, they want to appoint me as a core member of the church, saying crap like it's my duty as an angel. Not only that, they're asking me about which god I worship along with my goals of coming down here. But even after I told them the truth, I worship no god and my goal in coming here is to follow you, Mom. They still don't believe me. They have even tried to offer me a bunch of benefits, but I wasn't interested. Lysandra replied. That's rather annoying, isn't it? Kind of like a salesman who keeps knocking on your door or calling your number despite you saying no. Shiro muttered while leaning back a little. Tell me about it. Lysandra nodded. What have you done about it so far? Shiro asked. As her daughter, surely Lysandra wouldn't be too passive about it, right? Well, I tried to refuse as best as I could and even release my aura, but all that did was make them bow more. Rather than intimidation, my aura was apparently holy, and it made them want to worship me, saying things like, ah yes, this is truly the aura of a higher being. Lysandra replied while poking her fingers together. Staying silent, Shiro could see why Lysandra had so much trouble with them. It was akin to dealing with masochists. The more you hit them, the happier they get, or in her case, the more she displays her aura, the happier the church is. It's been tough on you, dealing with religious masochists. Shiro sighed. Huh? When we're masochists in this conversation? Madison raised her eyebrow in confusion. I mean, masochists like it the more you hit them, right? Isn't the church the same to Lysandra? Shiro asked with a wave of her hand. Holy F *CK, you're right. Madison paused for a moment in surprise. All right, enough about masochists and whatnot. I've sent a message to Keiko and Kiyomi for them to meet us in this city. Keiko's still doing some work in the front lines, so she might take a while, but Kiyomi is arriving in around a week's time. In the 7 days that we have, We'll do some dungeon clearing along with this church business that you have going on. Of course, if we can't deal with it, I don't mind showing them some force as well for bothering my daughter." Shiro smiled. Mom, they have level 200s in their ranks. I don't think it's a good idea to face them at your current state." Lysandra warned with concern. "Emin? Oh, you're worried about that. I forgot to tell you, but my body has completely recovered." Shiro grinned as the party paused once more. "Wait, your links are healed," they cried out in shock. "Yup. One of the rewards for completing the trial was a complete recovery. My links are now in perfect condition. If you're curious about what my power is like, you can just search up recent news about Mount Fuji." Shiro smiled. "Oh, I also caused a bit of trouble on my way here, and I've been issued a level 3 dangerous person ID. I've put up a barrier so that they can't see us." She continued. "Wait, you were issued a level 3 dangerous person ID? What the hell did you do?" Madison asked with shock. "Well, it's better for you to see." Shiro smiled and passed them a photo that she printed out secretly. The photo was a scene of what had happened after she fought the fighting dummy, and it displayed the destruction in all of its glory. Mind you, I did try to hold back since I don't know what 100% of my power is like. She shrugged as the party looked at her like she was a monster. "I'll wait, she is a monster." As they looked at the picture, Madison managed to find a clip of what had happened on Mount Fuji, and they watched the hundreds upon thousands of magic circles suddenly appear around Shiro within a single moment. "Damn, Shiro, are we still using the same system?" Madison asked jokingly. "I do believe so. But regardless, if you're still curious, why don't we level up some more then? We'll go to a high-level dungeon and clear it for some levels." Shiro smiled. "Oh, what dungeon do you have in mind?" Lyrica asked. "How about the level 150 dungeon, the Abyssal Crypt?" Shiro suggested. "Sure. Me and the party have been doing a level 140 dungeon for a few days now, and I think it's about time we got an upgrade." Lyrica nodded with a smile. "Great. In that case, then let's go. Oh, but before that, I think I'll need to put my disguise back on," Shiro said as she changed her appearance back once more so that she looked more like Atesh's mom. Seeing Shiro stand up, Een was a little unhappy that her time with Atesh was cut short as she quickly floated up to his side. "Can I hold him?" Een asked as Shiro raised her eyebrow. "You want to hold him?" "Yeah." Een nodded. Sure. Just so you know, if you drop him, I'll be starving you for a week," Shiro warned. Nodding her head, Een carefully held Addie in her embrace as a smile crept up on her face. "Lisa, look, he's so small," Een called out with giddiness as Lysandra chuckled. Leaving the three siblings to have fun with each other, Shiro edited the illusion to look like she had just met up with some friends. "Speaking of which, why have you disguised yourself like this?" Lyrica asked curiously while walking next to Shiro. "Emin? Well, if I destroy the church, I wouldn't want to make an enemy of every church in the world, now do I? You know, if you wanted to do that, can't you just make a new illusion when you fight them?" Lyrica asked. Asterisk cough. "Fine, but don't tell anyone the truth, okay?" Shiro coughed before leaning close to Lyrica's ear. Feeling Shiro's breath near her, Lyrica couldn't help but blush as her ears twitched a little. "Addie is just too cute, okay? I want to look more like his mother." Shiro whispered the truth into Lyrica's ear. "What are you whispering to each other about there? Could it be talks of romance?" Madison called out with a smile. "Nothing, you're overthinking it." Shiro laughed before walking back to Addie so that she could hold him more. Making their way towards the dungeon gate, they entered the level 150 dungeon, the Abyssal Crypt. Upon entering the dungeon, they were greeted to chiseled stone walls that seemed like they were finely carved pieces of art. Looking around, they were rather surprised to see the lack of monsters, as this was not usually the case. If anything, they should be bombarded by attacks since this is a B-ranked dungeon. Strange. Do you think all the monsters are waiting in the next corridor or something?" Lyrica asked as she furrowed her brows. "Perhaps. Give me a moment. I'll locate them all." Shiro smiled as she walked towards the walls. Pressing her hand against the stone, she closed her eyes and sent a pulse of mana through the dungeon. Mapping out the entire dungeon within her mind, she could see red dots that represented the monsters and noticed that they seemed to be gathered within the deepest parts of this dungeon. Not only that, but she could also sense that some of them were shivering for some odd reason, as if they evacuated to the final room out of desperation. "That's rather curious." Shiro muttered. What's wrong? Aram glanced over. The monsters, they seem to have run away to the deeper rooms. I can see that some of them are shivering. Do you think there is a rogue boss or something in this dungeon that made them this way? Shiro replied. Well, the only rogue monster I can think of is you. But if anything, this shouldn't be the case. This dungeon is supposed to be one of the more hostile ones, Aram said while showing her a page that described this dungeon. Furrowing their brows, the party looked at each other before nodding their heads. Let's go to the deeper parts of the dungeon then. I suppose if they're all gathered, it's a good chance for us to kill them all, Madison suggested. Agreeing with her idea, the party made their way down to the deeper parts of the dungeon while making a few plans for battle. So far, we have 4 attackers, 1 tank, 2 supports, and 1 adaptive. Lyrica and Lysandra will take the vanguard while Ian helps out from afar. Shinyu, since you're an assassin, you can just make your way around the battlefield without too many problems. Madison, while you are a tank, you're more like a bruiser tank that can also fight due to your class having 2 forms. Your job is to mostly protect the supports while going up to tank the boss when he appears. Aram, Sylvia, you 2 will naturally stay at the back and I'll be with you, covering for everyone if needed, okay? Shiro smiled as she explained their party composition. Now that you lay things out like this, we've basically got 6 attackers including you and Maddie, don't we? Lyrica chuckled since their party was heavily attack-focused. Well, that is true, but it's not too bad now, is it? Maddie can tank everything amazingly. Sylvia smiled. Yup, and with you buffing my defenses while making sure my HP is up at all times, I can keep them at bay without too many worries. Madison grinned. Speaking of which, I would have thought that the church would be pestering you for your healing prowess. After all, isn't the church respected due to the healers they provide? Shiro asked. Well, they did try to bother me at first before Lysandra had her class up. But after that, all of the church people were infatuated about her and couldn't focus on everything else, so I was given a break. Sylvia replied with a chuckle. URG, please don't talk about the church when we're here. I've heard enough about them to last me a lifetime. Lysandra sighed. All right. We'll deal with them before Keiko and Kiyomi arrive if we can. Shiro smiled. As she did not know when the age of demons and gods will be coming, the best thing she could do was to level up for now. There was also the whole problem about Duan Han In that had killed her / Kuromi and imprisoned Yuki in the mountains. Now that they were B-ranked, she was ready to go rescue her. However, before she could do that, she needed to inform Keiko and Kiyomi about the truth of her situation and what her plans are. After all, they deserved to know that she had died once already and that they needed to be careful about Duan Han In should they see him again. As they arrived in the final room, they were greeted by a giant wave of attacks that flew through the air. She's here. Kill her. One of the monsters shouted out in a panic. Quickly stepping in front of the party, Aram snapped her fingers before pointing upwards. Asterisk, boom. Suddenly, the gravity in the area in front of them shifted as all of the attacks were redirected to the ceiling. Seeing as how they attacked the party quite abruptly, Shiro had a rather displeased expression on her face. Welp girls, you see the enemies, and they're clearly not the best house owners as they have given us quite the harsh welcome. Show them how they should do things if they want to kill people, Shiro said with a grin. Nodding their heads, Lyrica, Shinyu, Lysandra, and Madison dashed into action while Addie watched while being carried by Shiro. Jumping into the air, Lyrica reached into her inventory and grabbed her sword. Readying it on her waist, she narrowed her eyes before flooding the sword with mana. Twisting her body, she swung the sword horizontally as it split itself into multiple segments that were connected through mana wires. Slashing everything within a 20-meter cone in front of her, she then retracted the sword back to its original length and slashed at those that hadn't died yet. Seeing this, Shiro couldn't help but raise her eyebrow in surprise since it looked like Lyrica had managed to procure the weapon needed for her hidden proficiency without her interference. Activating her analysis skill, she observed the construction of the weapon and couldn't help but notice the clear mix of magecraft and blacksmithing. There were runes hidden within each segment of the sword, and with how each of the segments were connected to each other, Shiro could guess that Aram had a hand in creating this weapon. With her skill set that involves gravity and forces, this is within her capabilities. She thought to herself as she felt proud of the party's development. It still felt like just yesterday that Lyrica was shy, and she was still mute from when they were back in New York. Shaking her head, she dismissed the nostalgic thoughts and looked at the battlefield. I can't just let everyone do the fighting while I harvest the EXP with my connection to Lisa. That would be lazy, she muttered while bringing out her bow, Asteria's embrace. While the bow cannot work in this environment due to the lack of stars, she could make her own. Setting Addy down for now, she was going to show him what she could do with a bow. Snapping her fingers, a Tier 4 magic circle suddenly appeared on the ceiling as a portal of sorts could be seen, slowly opening to reveal a multicolored galaxy that shimmered with starlight. Since the enemy was that of the dark element, her bow's passive skill, Goddess Blessing, was activated as her attack was enhanced with the divine attribute and dealt massive damage to dark elemental beings. However, that was just one of her abilities. Since everyone was showing off what they could do, Shiro decided to join in the fun and activated the skills attached to her armor, Ina. First cast activated. Second cast activated. She muttered as her armor glowed with a soft white hue. The first cast of her armor gave her 60% magic penetration and 50% critical chance under starlight. But it's the second activation that the monsters had to worry about. Second cast. When activated, your weapons are enhanced by astral enchantment, converting 50% of your highest stat into raw power for 30 seconds. With her INT stat being off the charts for her level, half of that being converted into raw power was something this dungeon could not accommodate. As the arrow was being formed on her bow, the floors and walls started to crack apart from the pressure. With such a monstrous amount of mana being emitted behind them, there was no way that the party would be able to ignore it, as the idea that Shiro had no match was once again solidified in their mind. Despite the bow not being her main weapon, it was still many times stronger than what they could accomplish. Charging the bow to maximum power with just the skills that she had activated, Shiro released the arrow from the bow as a flash of light filled everyone's vision. Asterisk, boom. Within a single moment, a tunnel of destruction could be seen as everything it touched was reduced to ash. Making sure to avoid the boss and her teammates, Shiro made sure that her attack was more of an opening act. Now then, with the appetizers finished, are you ready for the main course? Shiro asked with a charming smile filled with sadistic intent. Seeing Shiro smile towards them, the monsters suddenly felt a chill down their backs as they quickly bowed. Please spare us, the boss shouted out in fear, confusing the party. Huh. Please spare us, Empress. The boss repeated again as the party looked towards Shiro, who had lost her smile. Looking at the boss with a bland expression, Shiro was rather annoyed that she was not able to indulge and have some fun. Next time I shouldn't use such a strong attack as an opening, I guess, she thought to herself. Walking towards the boss slowly, the clack of her heels seemed deafening as everything else was quiet. Even the party stopped their attacks to see what was happening. Pulling out her sword, Ataraxia, Shiro pointed it at the boss's neck. Why do you want me to spare you? You're nothing but a dungeon monster that would respawn once we've left. Shiro questioned. I got you. The boss smiled as all of his subordinates transformed into flaming spears that glowed with an ominous blue, which was fueled by using their life. Before Shiro could even attack, hundreds of spears shot towards her. TCH, annoying twat. Shiro frowned. I don't know why the Empress of a race would come here, but I don't have anything to lose. The boss grinned as he slashed towards Shiro. Sensing that her friends were dashing towards her as of this moment, Shiro decided to do nothing and make eye contact with the boss. You see, I got a few trustworthy allies of my own to cover my back. Not that I need it, of course, but it helps, she said with a grin. Asterisk clank. Flickering in front of her, Lyrica parried the boss's attack while Madison slammed her shield into the boss's chest, pushing him back. Just as Aram was about to redirect the fire spears to the ceiling, both Een and Addy made a move. Jumping into the air, Een manifested her phoenix form and started to absorb all of the fire, while Addy only waved his hand, and a large portion of the flames flew to his side and floated there obediently. Seeing that Addy could control the flames as easily as she did, Een couldn't help but cry out in excitement. See, Shiro smiled while gesturing to her friends that protected her without her even doing anything. Now then, shall we kill the boss fast or slow, girls? She asked. I'd say fast since we need to kill him a few hundred more times. Lyrica narrowed her eyes. I'd say the same as well. Madison followed up with a now. Welp, you heard them. Bye-bye, Shiro chuckled as she readied Ataraxia and slashed towards the boss. Activating her sword domain and Azura's sword path, she cleaved the sword downwards. Asterisk, bang. Slashing past the boss body with ease, a wave of energy erupted out and started to carve away at the boss room. Despite only attacking twice in this dungeon, Shiro had managed to heavily damage the dungeon walls that were meant to be some of the strongest material around. Of course, it was limited to the level of the dungeon, but this is still something that even level 150 adventurers would struggle to break. I suppose I can let you girls handle the cleanup, right? Shiro asked while gesturing to the remaining monsters. Of course, leave it to us. Lyrica nodded with a smile. While the party was cleaning up the rest of the monsters, Shiro walked up to the boss body that was cleaved in two with fear present in his eyes. How did he even know I was an empress? Shiro wondered to herself before glancing over at her passive, which could not be turned off. Shaking her head, she realized that it was probably going to be a pain to use disguises in the future, since they would just need to recognize the pressure they felt from her. I suppose I am also level 110 now. Most B-classed adventurers can't harm me while those in the A-class are quite rare. As long as I deal with Duan Han-in, I'll be able to use my real identity without too many worries. She thought to herself while collecting the corpse. Of course, since this was her problem, she didn't exactly want to bring her mother and father into this since they may be hurt in the conflict. If anything, she hoped that she could deal with everything herself. Checking through the boss loot, Shiro was quite surprised to see quite a few purple-grade equipment along with some life-saving talismans. Since she had her rejuvenation skill along with her celestial runes to replenish a lot of her lost health, she didn't exactly need the talismans, so she set them aside to hand out to the party later. As for the equipment, their skills were pretty decent, but she figured that it was probably better to have the rest of the party look at them first. Walking back to Addy, Shiro picked him up before looking at the fire spears that floated around him. So you're able to control fire like your big sister, huh? Not exactly surprising when you think about it since you're a fire spirit, but to think you have this much power despite being so young. Good job, Addy. Shiro smiled while patting Addy's head. Hearing her praise, Addy burrowed his head into her shoulders out of embarrassment. As the party cleared out the monsters, Shiro started to wonder what her absolute strongest attack was. So far, she knew that Wrath of Stars was to date one of the best attacks that she had done. If she used it again with her links fully healed, then she could no doubt deal massive damage to Epona, maybe even wipe it off of the map. However, that was not her current limit. Even back then, she held back with Wrath of Stars since her links could not take any more stress. With the amount of passive and active skills she had now and links that were 100% repaired, she could easily go above and beyond. Only question was, how far could he go? If I mix things up with my Snowmancer class, I can create a continental-type weapon that can wipe out entire mountain ranges with a single attack. If I then combine it with Celestial Raiment, Frenzied Incarnation EX, Spirit Assistance, Chimera Arts, Asteria's Blessing, Celestial Gardens, Ina First and Second Cast, Ataraxia Berserk Skill, and my Soul Sword, what would the resulting power be like? She mused to herself since she could stack all of them together as long as she made sure to use them in the correct order. After all, some of her skills had quite a short duration, so she needed to use them last, or else they'll run out. Shaking her head, she doubted that she needed such power anytime soon since it would attract too much attention to her. Even dealing with the church didn't need this much firepower, as a pair of hand cannons made with her current standard would be enough. Hell, she could even make a giant mech that she had theorized about way back in New York when she had first bumped into Lucius. Speaking of which, I wonder if he's sorted out his faction yet. Before going to the trial, he did mention something about his faction that is linked to Een. Well, that can wait for a bit. Once Keiko and Kiyomi's arrived, I'll tell them about the situation in regard to Yuki, and we can go save her. Hopefully, I don't run into Duan Han-in, or else it would be quite troublesome. Repeating the dungeon clear with the party for a day, Shiro familiarized herself with the skills that they can each use and started to make a few key notes in her mind, much like what Kuromi would do in her sketchbook, such as how best to set everyone out if they're in a huge team fight. Not only that, but she had also been able to raise her level to 115 since they were able to clear the dungeon quickly. Once she reached 115, she had also gained a new skill from her Celestial Sylph Empress class. Celestial Court Appointment. You can appoint people of your choosing to take a position within your Celestial Court. If they accept, they gain passive bonuses in accordance to their role. The role will be tailored to their class, and you can only appoint a certain amount of people. So far, you can appoint 3 people to be in your Celestial Court. You gain 1 additional slot every 50 levels. 150, 200, 250. Currently used slots, 0/3.
Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you did, please like, share, and subscribe.